There was a room in our house we never used. Not because it was haunted or anything dramatic like that. Just a spare room. We called it the office, though no one worked in it. It didn't even have a desk, just a dusty treadmill, unopened Amazon boxes, and an ancient filing cabinet with our tax stuff from 2015. For 10 years, that door stayed shut, like a museum exhibit to a life we never lived. Until last week, when I noticed it was open, just slightly, a crack, enough to see that the treadmill wasn't there anymore. That might sound insignificant, I know, but when you've lived in the same house, with the same woman, under the same silent routines for a decade, you notice when something shifts. And lately, things have been shifting in ways I couldn't explain. Not loudly, just subtly, like gravity working sideways. She laughed more, but not with me. She wore makeup again, but not for me. She bought new clothes, but hid the receipts. And then, that room. I pushed the door open one night while she was out with coworkers, and for a second, I thought I'd stepped into someone else's home. Candles, a mirror, a chair in the center of the room, like someone had been sitting there, watching themselves. And her old record player, the one I broke in 2018 and thought she threw away. It was playing music when I walked in. Vinyl, soft, moody, not even plugged in. I stood there like an idiot, surrounded by the scent of perfume I didn't recognize, wondering how I could live in this house and miss the fact that another life was being lived inside it. I should have walked out right then, but instead, I opened the drawer of the filing cabinet, and what I found made my throat close. Not because it was shocking, but because it confirmed everything I'd been too cowardly to admit. And that's when I realized, for 10 years, she said no. She said she wasn't ready, said it wasn't her thing, said she just didn't feel that way. And then she did. Twice. In 1 week. Not with me. And with a smirk. I'll tell you what was in the drawer. I wish I could tell you I opened that drawer with confidence. That I flung it wide like some triumphant detective about to uncover the final piece of the puzzle. But I didn't. My hand hovered there, trembling a little, like I already knew whatever was inside would hurt. I pulled slowly. Old tax folders. Manuals from electronics we didn't own anymore. A dried pen. Dust. Normal stuff. Boring stuff. But beneath that stack of papers, shoved in the back, was a plain manila envelope with her handwriting across the front. No label. No return address. Just one word. Private. I know. I should have put it back. Walked away. Respected the boundaries of a marriage built on trust. But I'd spent 10 years trusting a woman who said no to me more times than I could count. No to connection. No to closeness. No to trying something new. No to therapy. No to adventure. No to intimacy. No to everything that makes two people feel like one. So I opened it. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. I blinked hard, thinking my eyes were playing tricks on me. But no. Each photo was her. Alone mostly. Sometimes standing in front of mirrors. Sometimes sitting on that chair in the middle of the room. Sometimes, and this is where my hands started shaking, wearing things I didn't know she owned. She looked confident, powerful, effortless. And in some photos, she was looking straight at the camera with this expression that I can only describe as knowing. Like she was performing for someone. But not me. Never me. There was no date. No timestamps. No notes. Just her, in that hidden room, doing the things she always told me she didn't want to do. I sat on the floor for I don't know how long. Minutes? An hour? My head felt like it was splitting in two. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. When did I stop being part of her life? And how did I not notice it until now? I heard the front door open. Panic. I stuffed everything back, closed the drawer, and bolted out of the room just in time to meet her in the hallway like nothing had happened. She smelled like citrus and wine, her cheeks pink from laughter, hair slightly windblown. Hey, she said casually, hanging up her coat. How was your night? I smiled. Lied. Said I watched a documentary. She smiled back. You should have come out. You'd have had fun. I told her I had work. She walked past me and didn't look back. And I stood there, still hearing that vinyl record spinning in my head. Later that night, as she slept beside me, facing the wall, like always, I got a notification on her iPad. She hadn't logged out of her email. I wouldn't usually look. But that night I did. And what I found made my mouth go dry. Because not only had she said yes, she'd said it twice. And it wasn't to me. I know I shouldn't have looked. I know opening someone's email is a line you don't come back from. But I couldn't stop myself. Not after what I'd seen. Not after the photos. Not after the record. Not after realizing that for 10 years I'd been living beside a woman whose private world I wasn't even allowed to peek into, while she smiled at me across the dinner table like we were still playing house. So yes, I looked. I tapped her Gmail icon, half expecting it to ask for a password. It didn't. And right there, sitting bold and unread, were two email threads. Different senders, different subjects, but the exact same word in both preview lines. Yes. The first one hit like a freight train. It was from someone named Luca S. Subject line, just say the word. Her reply was short. Yes, and I don't feel guilty. I opened the thread. My hands were sweating. The messages above hers were long, poetic, flirtatious, full of references I didn't understand. Mentions of last Thursday, of her little performance, of how she finally let go. And then, attached to the last message, was a photo. Black and white, artistic, dimly lit. Her again, this time facing away from the camera, shoulders bare, one hand in her hair, the mirror catching her face just slightly. That expression again, like she knew what it meant, knew I'd never understand it. I felt like I was staring at someone else's wife. And then I made the mistake of opening the second email. This one was worse. Not romantic, not poetic, just a confirmation from a company I'd never heard of. Studio Verdant session confirmed. Subject line, booking complete, private experience, Saturday, 7 p.m. Her message, yes, confirmed. Paid in full. There was a receipt attached. 2 guests. Special accommodations. No mention of what the experience actually was. My mind filled in the blanks. I couldn't breathe. My chest actually hurt. Not metaphorically, but like something was pressing down on me. I put the iPad down. Sat on the edge of the bed. She stirred in her sleep, rolled onto her back, let out a quiet sigh. I just stared at her. This woman, who once cried when I brought her the wrong brand of tea, was now sending yes, like it was nothing, twice, to 2 completely different lives that didn't include me. And for 10 years, every time I'd reached for her hand under the table, every time I tried to surprise her with a weekend trip, every time I suggested we try anything new, she always said no. Not harshly, just no. Like it was a muscle reflex. But now she was saying yes. With ease. With confidence. With pleasure. And not to me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to wake her up and demand answers. But what would I even ask? What do you say when the betrayal isn't just in the act, but in the smile that follows it? Instead, I got up, walked back to the office, turned on the light, and finally noticed something I had missed before. The treadmill wasn't just gone. There were indentations in the carpet. Heavy ones. Square, as if something big had sat there recently, and in the corner of the room, something flashed under the curtain. A tiny red light. Recording. It was the kind of red light you'd almost miss if you weren't looking for it. Faint, low on the floor, blinking behind a curtain that didn't quite reach the carpet. I stared at it for a few seconds, half hoping it was some leftover piece of tech I forgot we owned. An old modem, a toy, a surge protector. Anything. But no. When I pulled the curtain back, I found a small black device, wedged into the corner, angled perfectly toward the center of the room. The chair. It wasn't cheap. Sleek. Silent. No branding. Just one blinking eye, recording. Something. Or someone. My heart felt like it dropped through the floor. I didn't touch it. I didn't breathe. For a moment, I felt like I was the one being watched. Like I had stumbled onto a crime scene that hadn't been cleaned up yet. My eyes scanned the walls, the ceiling, every surface of the room I had ignored for a decade. How long had it been there? Had she put it there? Was someone else watching? Was it live? Recorded? The questions spun like knives in my chest. I looked back at the chair, that same chair that had appeared in all those photos in the envelope. It wasn't just decoration. It was a stage. And she was performing. But for who? The idea of confronting her made my stomach twist. What would I even say? Hey honey, I know you said you were tired, but I found the secret theater room you've been filming in while I've been doing the laundry and crying in the shower every other night. I sat in that chair. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I was trying to understand. Maybe I was trying to feel whatever she felt when she sat there. But the moment I did, I felt exposed. Like I was too late. Like the performance was over and I was just some pathetic understudy who never got the script. I stared into the mirror she'd angled in front of the chair. My reflection looked smaller than I remembered. Older. More used. like someone who had been slowly drained without realizing it. I whispered, "Why?" And then I heard it. Not her voice. Not the wind. A sound, click, from behind the filing cabinet. I stood so fast the chair almost toppled. My hands were shaking now, and my brain was screaming at me to just walk away. Leave it alone. Pretend it was all in my head. Pretend she still loved me. Pretend the last 10 years weren't a slow, quiet unraveling of everything I thought was safe. But I didn't walk away. I moved the filing cabinet. It was heavier than it looked. Took all my strength and made the wall scuff. Behind it, a hole in the drywall, small but deep, like someone had carved it out slowly, methodically, and then covered it with a cheap panel. I pulled the panel loose. Inside was a box. A black lockbox. Fingerprint access. No keyhole. No buttons. Just a tiny indentation, like it was made for her and only her. I didn't even try. I knew I wouldn't get in. I wasn't the one it was meant for. I stared at that box for a long time. Then I put everything back the way I found it. Moved the cabinet. Closed the curtain. Turned off the light. And as I walked out of the room, I realized something. It wasn't just that she had said yes to someone else. It's that she had built an entire world inside our home. And I was the only one who didn't have a key. I didn't sleep that night. I laid next to her, eyes wide open in the dark, listening to the tiny sounds her body made. A sigh, the rustle of hair against the pillow, the soft rhythm of her breath. I used to find that sound comforting. Now it felt like listening to a ticking bomb, knowing I had no clue when or where it might go off. She shifted in her sleep once and reached toward me. I flinched, not because I was afraid she'd touch me, but because I didn't know if I wanted her to. By morning, I had made a decision, not a brave one, not some noble, cinematic turning point, just a quiet, tired agreement with myself. I needed to stop pretending this was normal. I needed to stop protecting her from the truth just because I was afraid of what it would say about me. So I started looking, not confronting, not accusing, just observing, like a scientist who finally admits the experiment has failed and is now trying to figure out why. I began checking small things. Her calendar, which had a lot of color-coded entries lately, most of them labeled vaguely. Wellness, creative session, private space. Her car, which had a new phone charger in it. Not the kind you'd buy on your own. A nicer one. A different brand than we usually use. A little tag still on it from some electronics boutique I'd never heard of. Our shared bank account. Mostly the same, but with one recurring transfer I couldn't identify. $219 every third Friday. Labeled only private res. Private. Again with that word. Private. Everything about her life had become sealed off. Like she was slowly building a second version of herself. One that I wasn't allowed to know, let alone love. I checked the trash. I know how pathetic that sounds. But I did. That next Friday. After she said she was going to that new book club and left in a rush. I waited 15 minutes, then opened the kitchen trash carefully like it might bite me. That's when I found it. A torn envelope, folded in half. Inside it was a printed confirmation from that same company, Studio Verdant. This time addressed directly to her, with her full name and a list of scheduled sessions. One-on-one, immersive, private. But what caught my eye, what actually made my knees weaken, was a name listed under secondary client. It wasn't Luca. It wasn't anyone I recognized. It was Marin. Female. I sat there on the floor of my kitchen for God knows how long, rereading the name, trying to make sense of what I'd just discovered. All the clues, the hidden room, the camera, the envelope full of photos, the recording light, the rehearsals, suddenly restructured themselves in my head, like puzzle pieces snapping into place. It wasn't just someone else. It was someone completely unexpected. I had spent weeks spiraling, imagining some charming stranger, some poetic barista, some mysterious coworker with perfect teeth and better timing. But never once, not even in my darkest, most insecure moments, did I imagine her secret world didn't even include a man at all. And the worst part? I didn't feel anger. I felt relief. Because it meant I hadn't been rejected for being less than another man. I'd just never been what she wanted in the first place. I didn't bring it up. Not the emails. Not the name. Not the envelope. Not the secret sessions, or the lockbox, or the blinking red light. I didn't ask who Marin was, or why my wife's calendar suddenly looked like a classified government schedule. I didn't say a word. Why? Because I knew what would happen. She'd lie. Not maliciously. Not even convincingly. Just enough. Enough to make me doubt myself. Enough to make me feel like the insane one for piecing things together instead of letting them rot behind closed doors. So I stayed quiet. And instead, I did what I've always done. I bent. I started making dinner more often. I did the laundry without being asked. I bought her flowers and acted like it was random, spontaneous, thoughtful. She smiled, kissed my cheek, said I was so sweet, and then went back to texting someone else under the dinner table. I watched her live an entirely different life without me, and instead of burning it down, I tried to earn my way back into it. Can you imagine how pathetic that is? Trying to win back a person who never invited you in the first place? But I kept telling myself, maybe this was temporary. Maybe she was just going through something. An identity crisis. A phase. A reinvention. God knows I've had mine. There was a year in our marriage I spent most evenings on the porch crying over novels I never finished writing. She stayed through that. Maybe this was her version. But deep down, I knew better. She had changed. Not just on the surface. Not just the clothes and perfume and playlists and the cryptic calendar events. Something in her eyes. The way she moved in the house. Like she was a tenant in a place that no longer required my permission. One night, about a week after I found the name Marin, I made the stupidest mistake of all. I followed her. She told me she was going to a late screening with a few co-workers from marketing. I nodded, kissed her goodbye, and waited exactly 10 minutes. Then I got in my car and drove after her like some second-rate spy. I don't know what I expected to find. Some sleek underground club, some secret gallery, some hotel glowing with neon signs of betrayal. But what I found was worse. She parked in front of a small, windowless building with no sign. Not a single car in the lot. Not even streetlights nearby. Just one flickering light over the door and a black buzzer she seemed to know by muscle memory. She pressed it. The door opened for her almost instantly. She didn't look back. Didn't hesitate. Just slipped inside like she belonged there. And I sat in my car, watching the door close behind her, realizing something that made my throat burn. She's never looked that confident walking into our house. I stayed in the car for over an hour. I didn't get out. I didn't knock. I didn't scream. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, trying to figure out what was worse, the betrayal itself, or the fact that it didn't even feel like betrayal anymore. It felt like confirmation. Confirmation that I had never actually been chosen, just accepted. Like a safe bet. A soft landing. A silent agreement between two people who didn't want to die alone, but weren't really living together either. Eventually, she came out. Same face. Same clothes. But her walk was lighter. She looked unburdened. She got in her car and drove off without ever knowing I was watching. And that night, I didn't go home. I slept in a motel 3 blocks away, staring at the popcorn ceiling, asking myself the one question I never thought I'd need to ask. Was I ever even her husband, or just the guy she rehearsed monogamy with before the real show began? The next morning, I went home before she woke up. I slipped into the kitchen like a thief, heart pounding as if I was the one who had something to hide. She was still in bed. I could hear the soft hum of her white noise machine, the one she started using 2 months ago, without explanation. I made coffee, burned the toast, stared at the wall like it owed me something, and then I opened the fridge and saw it. A white envelope, magnet under the grocery list. My name on the front. In her handwriting. Just that, for Elliot. For a second, I thought maybe this was it. The confession, the goodbye, the final twist of the knife. But when I opened it, my hands trembling like I was about to disarm a bomb, it was just an invitation. To a dinner party. Some kind of creative showcase her friend was throwing downtown. A restaurant I'd never heard of. Saturday night. Formal attire. She'd written a little note inside. Would love for you to be there. Means a lot to me. I laughed. Out loud. This bitter, breathless little noise that didn't sound human. I don't know what part of it cracked me more. That she still thought she could hand me invitations like we were friends from college, or that she actually wanted me there. So of course I said yes. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to see it. Whatever it was. Whatever performance she was curating. I had to look it in the eye, one final time, before I stopped pretending I could win her back with omelets and polite silence. The restaurant was beautiful, minimalist, angular, full of shadows and too many candles. Everyone was dressed like they had walked off the cover of some lifestyle magazine I'd never afford a subscription to. I showed up in my best blazer, which suddenly looked like it came from a thrift store clearance rack. And then I saw her. Ines. My wife. standing in the center of the room, radiant, confident, surrounded by people who laughed too loudly and touched her arm too often. She wore a black dress I'd never seen before. It hugged her like it had been sewn onto her skin. She wasn't performing. She was home. When she spotted me, she didn't flinch. She smiled, waved softly, like I'd just walked into a PDA meeting, and excused herself from her circle of orbiting admirers. She walked over, kissed me on the cheek, nothing more, and thanked me for coming. Her eyes never fully landed on mine. Like I was a ghost she didn't want to admit was real. She led me to our table. 2 seats. 1 candle. A little card that read, "Reserved." We sat. We ate. We talked. But it wasn't talking. It was her narrating a life I wasn't a part of. Conversations I didn't understand. Names I didn't recognize. Events she hadn't mentioned once in the past 6 months. I nodded. I smiled. I swirled my wine. I played the part. Because that's all it was. A rehearsal dinner. For her new life. The actual showcase came later. After the dessert plates were cleared and the lights dimmed further, someone walked to the mic and introduced the creative contributors of the evening. There were only 3 names. Hers was last. She stepped up, thanked everyone, and then introduced a short film she'd been working on in private, a passion project, she said, about identity, control, and personal liberation. The room applauded. The screen lit up. And what I saw wasn't explicit, wasn't even inappropriate. It was abstract, artistic, beautiful, in a way that made my chest cave in. There she was, framed in shadow and light, reflected through glass, moving through corridors of our house that had been transformed into something unrecognizable. The camera lingered on her hands, her back, her breath. Mirrors, chairs, a voiceover I didn't recognize. Words like permission, authenticity, resurrection. And then, the final frame. The back of her head, facing the mirror, wearing the same dress she had on now. Fade to black. The room erupted in applause. I clapped too. Because what else was I supposed to do? She looked over at me once, smiled. And in that moment, I understood the cruelest part of all. This was never a betrayal. It was an evolution. And I was just the shedding skin left behind. I didn't speak to her on the ride home. She offered, gently, to call a car for me. Said I looked tired. Said she understood if I wanted to go early. But I shook my head. I'll walk, I said. I need the air. And I meant it. I walked. For 2 hours. Through streets I didn't recognize, past people I didn't know. The city felt different, or maybe I was finally seeing it clearly. I kept replaying her film in my head. The mirrors, the metaphors, the way she held herself like someone finally free. And I realized something I hadn't let myself admit in 10 years. It was never about me. Her silence, her distance, her gradual retreat, they weren't punishments. They weren't tests. They weren't some secret code I was supposed to crack. She just wasn't meant for the life I kept begging her to live with me. And neither was I. I had built our marriage like a fortress, sturdy, quiet, predictable. A place where nothing surprising ever happened, where every day looked like the last, where safe was the highest compliment and change was the enemy. And for a while, maybe that's what we both needed. But people outgrow fortresses. They start looking for doorways. And the truth is, I was never locked out of hers. I just never knocked. When I got home, the house was dark. She had already gone to bed. I didn't go upstairs. I didn't check her phone. I didn't go to the hidden room. Instead, I made tea, sat in the kitchen, and for the first time in a long, long while, I started writing. Not to her, not to Marin, not to Reddit, to myself. A few weeks passed. We didn't fight. We didn't scream. We didn't turn into strangers or enemies. Instead, we talked. Real talk. For hours, for days. About who we had been. About the illusions we both clung to. About how sometimes love doesn't vanish. It just evolves into something quieter. We didn't rush to decisions. We didn't perform for friends. We just listened. And then one Sunday morning, over coffee, she slid a small black box across the table. Not a ring. The lockbox from the hidden room. She placed her finger on the scanner, and it clicked open. Inside was a flash drive. I think you should see it, she said. But only if you want to. I hesitated. Then smiled. No, I said. I think I'm good. She nodded. No drama. No big moment. Just peace. We divorced, eventually. Not out of spite. Not out of betrayal. Just out of respect. And it was the kindest thing either of us had ever done for each other. Now, I live in a small apartment with too many books and a dog I named August. I joined a writing group. I started cooking again, not for anyone else, just for me. Some nights I still think about her, and when I do, I don't feel anger. I feel gratitude, because sometimes the most painful no life gives you is actually making space for the right yes. And I'm finally ready to say it. Yes, to myself, to new things, to whoever I'm becoming now.